Sit. Speak. Stay. Good dog. Good dog. Oh, hello. This story that I'm about to read you is about mice. And it reminded me of a family of mice that moved into my house last year. They lived in a hole in the wall near the kitchen. There was a father and a mother and 4 little kids. Now, before bedtime, I'll often bake a loaf of bread and let it cool overnight because, well, there's nothing better than fresh bread in the morning. Well, the family of mice liked it too and started eating it up after I went to sleep. This went on for weeks. I'd bake bread and they'd eat it up all in the middle of the night. I thought about using mouse traps, but that seems so uncivilized. Finally, I decided to write them a note. It said, "Dear Mouse Family, from now on, whenever I bake bread, I'll leave half the loaf for you outside your front door. In return, all I ask is that you leave the other half for me to eat in the morning. Yours, in all fairness, Mrs. P." Then I folded the note and stuck it in their house. The next morning, I got up and discovered that the mice had eaten the bread outside their door. And my half of the bread too, every last crumb. And there, sitting at the bottom of my empty baking tin, I found a little note. And that little note said, "Dear Mrs. P, don't blame us. Everyone knows mice can't read. Ha ha. Love, the Mice Family." Well, I had to admit they were pretty funny mice. Oh, they made me laugh. And I laughed all the way to the animal shelter where I adopted a cat that sleeps all night in my kitchen. He doesn't like bread and never, absolutely never, writes me funny notes. Now, this little story is one of Aesop's fables, and it's about 2 mice and 2 different ways of life, and it's called The City Mouse and the Country Mouse. Once, a little mouse who lived in the country invited a little mouse from the city to visit him. When the city mouse sat down to dinner, he was surprised to find that the country mouse had nothing to eat except barley and grain. "Really," he said, "you do not live well at all. You should see how I live. I have all sorts of fine things to eat every day. You must come to visit me and see how nice it is to live in the city." The little country mouse was glad to do this, and after a while he went to the city to visit his friend. The very first place that the city mouse took the country mouse to see was the kitchen cupboard of the house where he lived. There, on the lowest shelf behind some stone jars, stood a big paper bag of brown sugar. The little city mouse gnawed a hole in the bag and invited his friend to nibble for himself. The 2 little mice nibbled, and the country mouse thought he'd never tasted anything so delicious in his life. He was just thinking how lucky the city mouse was when suddenly the door opened with a bang and in came the cook to get some flour. "Run!" whispered the city mouse, and they ran as fast as they could get to the little hole where they had come in. The little country mouse was shaking all over when they got safely away, but the little city mouse said, "That is nothing. She will soon go away, and then we can go back." After the cook had gone away and shut the door, they stole softly back, and this time the city mouse had something new to show. He took the little country mouse into a corner on the top shelf where a big jar of dried prunes stood open. After much tugging and pulling, they got a large dried prune out of the jar onto the shelf and began to nibble at it. This was even better than the brown sugar. The little country mouse liked the taste so much that he could hardly nibble fast enough. But all at once, in the midst of their eating, there came a scratching at the door and a sharp, loud meow. "What is that?" said the country mouse. The city mouse just whispered, "Shh," and ran as fast as he could to the hole. The country mouse ran after, you may be sure, as fast as he could. And as soon as they were out of danger, the city mouse said, "That was the old cat. She's the best mouser in town. If she once gets you, you are lost." "This is very terrible," said the little country mouse. "Let us not go back to the cupboard again." "No," said the city mouse. "I will take you to the cellar. There's something special there." So the city mouse took his little friend down the cellar stairs into a big cupboard where there were so many shelves. On the shelves were jars of butter and cheeses in bags and out of bags, and overhead hung bunches of sausages, and there were spicy apples in barrels standing about. It smelled so good that it went to the little country mouse's head. He ran along the shelf and he nibbled at a cheese here and a bit of butter there until he saw an especially rich, very delicious smelling piece of cheese on a queer little stand in a corner. He was just on the point of putting his teeth into the cheese when the city mouse saw him. "Stop! Stop!" cried the city mouse. "That is a trap." The little country mouse stopped and said, "What's a trap?" "That thing is a trap," said the city mouse. "The minute you touch the cheese with your teeth, something comes down on your head hard, and you're dead." The little country mouse looked at the trap, and he looked at the cheese, and he looked at the city mouse. "If you'll excuse me," he said, "I think I will go home. I'd rather have barley and grain to eat and eat it in peace and comfort than have brown sugar and dried prunes and cheese and be frightened to death all the time." So the little country mouse went back to his home, and there he stayed all the rest of his life. The end.